press. The price of cocaine in Britain at the moment is rock bottom. In fact, in the whole of Europe is rock bottom. I used to be able to literally rub it between my fingers, and you could tell really good cocaine was like rubbing butter between your fingers. And look at the colour, and pure white, you can almost be guaranteed it would be Bolivian. The Peruvian will be more of a yellowy, buttery sort of colour.
Welcome back, guys, to the Easily Distracted podcast. We've got a very special guest again. He's come for a part 2. Again, travelled a long way for it. So we've got Posh Pete on the podcast, so he's mostly known for his should we say great success in the sort of
some success. Unfortunately, I got caught. Otherwise, I'd have been a lot more successful.
Well, I mean, look, it's been like what, more than a year, or it's been like just around a year since you came on last, and so how have you been? You know, what's
not too bad. Surviving, painting and decorating a lot, staying out of trouble.
Is anyone
You can see my hands are covered in paint now.
Anyone recognising you in the pit, like when you turn up to jobs? I remember you said that last time.
I have had a couple of those. I actually went to a job. I probably shouldn't say this, but I went to a job in near Liverpool, St Anne's, I think it was. And unbeknownst to me, the wife had recognised me, and this was for a company that I do a lot of work for, and she went ballistic, and the company didn't tell me, and all throughout the job whilst I was painting this, whatever I was painting, I won't go into too much detail. She was giving me just being really funny with me. And at the end, when I left, the company told me, oh yeah, she found out who you were right at the beginning, but we didn't tell you because we thought you'd let you finish the job. And then they deducted nearly 600 quid off my pay. Because, I won't go into it, but it was just a nightmare. But I do get people recognise me sometimes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, look, that's
sometimes it's alright, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. I guess you might have some like interesting run-ins with people. I mean, like, so going on that, like, so were there like any moments early on where like you considered a different path, like, well,
how do you mean early in life?
Yeah, so like when you were kind of like, let's say at your early start when you were in the drug game, maybe like in that sort of time where you transitioned from selling pills to selling coke. Did you, like, at one point when it was just about before it was getting very big, were you just like, should I just cut out? Like,
there was, in everybody's life there's those points in life where there's a left path and a right path, or you know what I mean. And I was living in Bristol. I dropped out of uni and I was really getting into the coke game at that point. And I don't know what I mentioned before, but by the age of 20, I'd seen like 8 people die in front of me from car accidents, a couple of overdoses, heart attacks, just mainly natural causes. But I just happened to be in the, because I was travelling around the country a lot, I would happen across accidents and stuff. And I don't know, I was just in places where people died. And also a lot of friends had died aside from that. So I'd always kind of wanted to go into medicine at uni and become a doctor or pharmacologist. But the training's 6 years long, didn't have enough funding, couldn't do it. So anyway, living in Bristol, and I was sort of getting a bit sick of the whole business and thinking, this is gonna lead to me ending up in prison for sure. It's gonna end up there or dead. And I decided to try and become a paramedic, and contacted the Avon and Somerset ambulance service. And I said, look, I've got one conviction at the moment for cannabis. It was only a minor. Got I think it was probation. And they said, okay, well, we can probably get around that, but only if you've got a clean driver license. So they sent me all the forms, filled out all the forms, and literally the day I was going to post the forms, I come down the stairs in the morning at this house in Bristol, and on the doormat there's a speeding ticket from one of the first ever like Gatso, those yellow box speed cameras in Manchester and Salford. I've been coming back down from Edinburgh, gone through it, and I got a speeding ticket. And I looked at it and I thought, me being me, I thought, well, that's obviously destiny telling me that I'm not. I should just carry on being a drug dealer and not be a paramedic.
That's crazy that one speeding ticket could have shaped.
Yeah,
your
well,
whole
it did.
life. Yeah.
It did to some degree. So there's me. I thought, well, there's no point sending it in now because now I've got a speeding ticket. I'm not going to become a paramedic.
Oh, mate.
Whether or not that was a good thing, because I mean that's highly stressful as well. But I've probably seen a hell of a lot more people die in my life than most paramedics have.
Yeah, probably. No, that's probably true. I mean, it would be the perfect start to a movie. Like coming down the stairs with like your stuff on, getting ready to like go and ship everything out, and then thing comes through the door, and then foreshadows to like something really sped up of like a whole life.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those moments. I will never forget that. And there's been a few of those. But actually, I remember another one. Well, shall I go on?
Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't so much a separation of pathways or whatever, but I was driving down to London to meet someone to do a deal in Chiswick, and it wasn't someone that I knew very well, and I was a bit wary, and all the way down things kept happening, like the car that I was in, I don't know, there was traffic jams and delays, just things kept getting obstacles in the pathway. Got a flat tyre as soon as I got there. And all these little signs were sort of telling me you shouldn't go. And sure enough, I got there, and I'm waiting for the guy in a back alley just off the Chiswick High Road. The guy turns up, and I told him to come on his own. He didn't. He turns up with a friend. They pull a Derringer on me, a 2-shot Derringer, and rob. I think it was like 14 or 16. I think it was £14,000 from me, which was in the boot of the car. And the guy with the gun, like these small 2-shot Derringers, was shaking, and I could see that he was high on coke. And I thought, I'm not getting killed for the sake of 14 grand. And they'd brought the coke with them, so they showed me this half a kilo of coke, which is what I was buying. And I recognised it straight away as the stuff that I was being given anyway from the firm that I was working with in East London, in Erith. So I didn't say anything. As soon as they left, I phoned up the guy in Erith and I said, look, I think your guys have just robbed me, because it's the same material, it's got the same stamp on it, it's the same packaging, 100% the same cocaine. These are their names. Phone your people and find out. So he phoned the people he was getting it from, and sure enough, they were supplying them as well. I owed them, like the guys that were supplying me, money. So I said, well, you better collect the money they've just robbed from me that I owe you from them. And they were never heard from again.
How much
I don't know what happened.
How much did you owe them?
It was quite a bit more.
No, okay.
But I said, obviously you could collect that bit and, charge them a bit of interest for doing what they did. Because basically they robbed their own people.
Yeah, it's quite like, I feel like that's also a very lucky moment, because imagine if it wasn't, like, it had nothing to do with it, and now you're just like left with a massive hole that you've got
in my chest.
Yeah, that could have been the case as well. But I was quite like curious to ask you this, like, have you do you regret anything, or are you the type of person that's like, okay, so do you like, you regret the first moment you started selling coke?
No, not the first moment. But I mean, I regret, what I put my family through, what I put my ex-girlfriend through, and a daughter. I regret the implications of what I did, and the ripple effect it had on other people around me, friends, family. Well, family first, obviously, friends, and beyond. And also, to some degree, I know that cocaine that I supplied to people, that then supplied it to other people, for sure, was probably responsible for people ending up dead. So, that is on my conscience. And obviously, everybody has regrets in life, and I've lost a lot through becoming a drug dealer and doing what I did. Yeah. I lost a good 13 years in total between the prison sentence in Britain and the prison time in Ecuador. You know, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah,
Can you,
few regrets.
Can you run us through that? You know, you said the prison sentence in Ecuador. Can you run us back through that? How you got arrested there, and what was the thing that you tripped up with?
Yeah, so obviously it's greed, isn't it? It always gets you in the end. Yeah, so decided to do that one last job, which was going out to Ecuador. I'd already fled Britain because the police were on my case. They knew that I knew that they were following me, so it became a whole game of cat and mouse. And I knew it was only a matter of days, if not minutes, before they arrested me because of the laboratory that they'd raided in Edinburgh. And I'd just been way too close to it. I'd been in there, and you know, my forensics were all over the place. So I disappeared to France, hid out, and I was still in contact with the Colombian who was an informant for, I suppose, National Crime Agency or whoever. And I'd arranged this last, and it literally was going to be the last job because I knew that, you know, the game was up basically. But I thought, I can get away with this because I'm not going into Britain. I'm not flying back with it. I'm sending somebody else with it. I'm coming back to France, then going out to Thailand just to be extra safe and stay there for 6 months. So anyway, tell the informant because it's arranged through him, and I wasn't going to pay him because, you know, I had a pretty good idea that he was an informant by this point. So he arranges it through his contact, and he, knowing that I was, you know, that this was the last opportunity for the police to get me, obviously told them, and they made sure that they arrested me because, you know, I was going to go back to France and disappear then, and they would have had a hard job finding me. I mean, you know, they had a hard enough job finding me anyway. Well, not that hard a job because they arrested me, but you know, had I not done that last job and gone on the run properly, then, you know, I probably would have got away. But, you know, then you're on the run for the rest of your life. You literally have to cut off contact with all your family, your friends, everything. And that's pretty difficult to do when you start to think about it and become an absolute new person with no contact with anybody from your previous life. It's not so easy as people think. So, yeah, you know, the last job led to my downfall in Ecuador. Got arrested in a hotel room in Quito by Ecuadorian Interpol with the British police in the background.
And like you were, I remember you were saying that, you know, that day that you got arrested, like you went through the lobby and
at the airport with the woman with the clipboard. Or in the hotel.
No, I think it was the hotel that they told you, like, you should go on a...
Oh, the receptionist. Yeah. I'd befriended this one of the receptionists at that particular hotel. Alejandra, I think her name was. And me and my girlfriend had just had dinner in the hotel kind of restaurant. Went to the lobby, the reception, and said, "Oh, can we have the key to the room?" And she looked me straight in the face, the receptionist, Alejandra, and she said, "Oh, have you been to the Galapagos Island?" And I said, "No," and I'd never been. And she said, "Well, you really should go now then." And I was like, "What's she trying to tell me?" You know. And obviously the police had the whole hotel surrounded by this point. And it was very kind of her to try and warn me. But yeah, got in that lift, went up to the top floor, lift doors open, go down the corridor, key in the door, and as soon as that key went in the door, all hell breaks loose, and there's the Ecuadorian police, in plain clothes, mind you, with balaclavas on, and machine guns running down the corridor, shouting at you in Spanish, which you don't. Well, I didn't fully understand, but I understood it enough to not move. And me and my girlfriend got arrested. So that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, your heart must have sunk.
Did you actually know they were police, like, because they're plain clothes? Did you think that could have been
I think one or two of them had policia across the, you know, like bulletproof vest on and all the rest of it. But initially, I was like,
"I'm dead."
Well, no, I mean, it was odd actually. I didn't panic. It was weird, but yeah, obviously, you know, you get the cold feeling come over you of dread. and just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, that's. I guess they really need to make a film about you, Pete, man.
Well,
Like,
there is some, like I don't know whether I mentioned before, but
I think you did.
yeah, there's a well-known British TV personality I'm working with at the moment on a script. It's taken a while. We've both been ill. I've just been ill, still recovering, as you could probably tell. And
ooh.
the personality was ill for a while, and also is very busy. But it is getting worked on, and
Right.
it should be a series, because yeah, it would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
look.
blow my own trumpet, but it would be.
Yeah, mate. Like I think specifically these days as well, things like that, like they get a lot of like a lot of people like watching that kind of stuff. Like it's
Yeah,
is it gonna take like a sort of a Narcos approach, or is it gonna what's
I think it's not going to be. I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched Narcos, but I mean, I've seen enough of it to know roughly. But I mean, I saw enough of it in real life.
yeah.
But no, I think it's going to be more, sort of normal English lad, guy, person, which I am.
Mm.
Growing up in having a sort of fairly normal childhood, ending up in the world of madness, and and then an Ecuadorian prison. I mean, the Ecuadorian prison is to some extent the least of the madness. A lot of it was beforehand.
Yeah.
All the crazy stuff that we were doing. I mean, yeah, sure, Ecuadorian prison was like a war zone, but I mean, a lot of the drama will be prior to that, because obviously that's the interesting and glamorous side of things, should we say?
Yeah, you're talking about the sort of a glamorous side of things. So, like, can you talk us through like when you were at the peak of that? Like, what was kind of your life like when you were,
I mean, I'll say I was trying to play it down a bit. I mean, I got sentenced in 2000 for the first case in Britain, and at that point I was living in a 5-bedroom Jacobean manor house with grounds, a lake, a private drive, in a beautiful village. Really lovely. 4 or 5 cars in the drive, Land Rover Discovery, Mercedes, all the rest of it, blowing loads of money in hotels, spending probably about £1.50, £2 a week on hotels. Just blowing money like it meant nothing. And after that sentence, I kind of realised that if you're doing this sort of business, you need to tone it down a bit. So when I then eventually got into the the whole Ecuadorian thing, at that point I was initially I was painting and decorating, living in a 1-bed flat on the back of my dad's property. I pretty much kept that like that until I got caught. Obviously until I went on the run. So I kind of learned my lesson on the first sentence, that you can't be too ostentatious.
Mm-hmm.
All these people that you see on YouTube these days or whatever, flashing bundles of money and their big new flash sports cars and Range Rovers and whatnot, and yet they can't justify 10 pence, and they're living on the dole or benefits or whatever. It's like, if you're doing the business, you have to be able to justify the money. You have to have a company or a business. The police are just too on it these days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you're doing that and risking it all, what's the point if you can't spend it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, genuinely, there's no point, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's such a high risk. You may as well enjoy it, but
that was the thing. Initially when we started it, I remember on the first job having a holdall full of money, like about £250,000 back there, and looking at it, and I was so addicted to the adrenaline of the whole, the whole sort of game side. Well, I wouldn't call it. Well, it is a game, like the organisation side of it, and trying to beat law enforcement and getting round customs and excise and all the rest of it. The money became of no interest, and because it was cash, and we at that point didn't really have too many ways of laundering the money. It was just a case of hiding it somewhere and moving on to the next job. Like you say, if you can't clean the money, then you can't really spend it. And particularly nowadays, it's like, you go to the shop with cash and you pull out a £50 note, they won't even, they think you're a criminal straight away.
What are some of the ways to launder money then? Back in the day, and also if you had any knowledge now.
Well, I mean, typical ways of laundering money. I'll give you an example. Just recently in Gloucestershire, well, in fact, I think nationwide, I saw a case of a load of barber shops with a lot of Albanians and, I don't know, Eastern Europeans, shall we say, who, cash businesses. Any businesses with high cash turnover are usually, or can be used as fronts for laundering money, particularly because they're cash. Taxi companies, like I say, barber shops, also anything like that, car washes. A lot of these things are just fronts for laundering money.
But how much can you get through in like a week? Like, surely you can't put through that much to raise flags.
I'll give you an example of a company. This was in South America, and it was what was it called? I think it was called Pinguino, like penguin, the Spanish word for penguin. It's an ice cream company out of South America, and initially it was started by the Colombian cartels to launder the money because of the amount of money that they were getting, and it was all cash sales, and they ended up making so much money from the ice cream that they stopped laundering money through the company, and actually it became a legal company in its own right. What was the initial question?
Like, how much can you put through a week, like, without raising flags? Because obviously you can't just start putting like 100 grand a week in a barber shop.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, HMRC have a general idea of what a typical company makes in a typical trade each year. Say, as me as a painter and decorator, they will have an average of what a painter and decorator makes. And if that suddenly fluctuates up high, then they're going to look at you, And the same with any business, they'll know roughly what you're making, like as a podcast or whatever. And if you can't justify the sudden peak in earnings, then they're going to tear into you for sure.
They're going to audit you, won't they?
See, I have to wipe my nose a bit. Oh,
that's I mean, it's like.
God.
As I think about it, it's crazy, all these like businesses that you see, especially around. I mean, I'm not going to say which area, but there are a lot of areas, especially in the UK, where you see just like a lot of like burger shops that are like
cafes. That's another.
It's classic.
Burger shops.
It's classic.
Chicken joints.
Yeah, chicken joints.
So what will like the owner?
Worst
Will they just get approached by like someone running an organisation, or are they the organisation?
Yeah,
themselves?
the organisations will set them up.
Yeah.
Intentionally, as a front.
Yeah, and then you probably like inflate your employees' earnings. You probably inflate.
Yeah,
like,
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You say you bought a company car when you haven't. There'll be all sorts of fraudulent things going through there, like loads of dodgy receipts. I don't know.
You need a good accountant, pretty much.
Well, exactly. Yeah, they'll have their accountants that are just bending the books. Doubling them over.
I mean, look, it's as long as it's obviously not legal, but bending the rules, I guess,
Well, there's tax.
It's frowned upon,
and then there's fraud.
Yeah. I guess there's a pretty fine line.
All these billionaires like to call it tax avoidance, or what's the other expression? I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Taking the piss.
Yeah. Taking the piss and getting away with it. So, right, so. Obviously, you were speaking about Ecuador and how the whole Ecuador thing came about, but how did it actually? How was it born? Like, obviously, you came out of it was after you came out of the prison the first time, correct? That then you started going direct.
Yeah.
So how did that even come about in the first place?
Yeah. So I mean, prior to getting caught in Britain, I mean, I'd been going up to London to source a lot of the cocaine anyway. In fact, most of it was coming from there. And at the time, oddly enough, another crazy, talking about life stories. The Colombian who was the informant was the person that was supplying the guy in Erith who I phoned when I got robbed that £14,000. So all those years later, I was coming out of prison and decided to import cocaine from Ecuador. I meet this Colombian through a different contact, unknowing that he's the guy that was supplying the guy in Erith. Years down the road, I'm with him, with the Colombian in London, and he says, "Oh, we just got to go to Erith to meet somebody to drop some coke off." And I said, "Erith?" I said, his name's not, I say, John. And he went, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And it turned out it was the same guy. I mean, what are the chances of that?
Small world.
Yeah, very small world.
Good cocaine.
Billions
Small
to
world.
one. I mean, it's just like nuts. So again, what was the question? I've got brain fog from this.
No, it's all right. It's right. So how did the whole Ecuador sort of thing come about?
Yeah, so I was in Parkhurst and reading a newspaper one day, and obviously 9/11 had happened, so all the security had gone through the roof, and a lot of drug dealers or mules were losing parcels coming through, or containers coming through the ports, or passengers coming through airports because of the heightened security and the advent of scanners. I don't know whether they came in a few years later, I think, but it was all because of 9/11 anyway. So I realised that the days of bringing in cocaine in powder form, or most drugs really, unless you had someone paid off in customs and excise or at the point of crossing the border, then it's going to be very difficult to get the drugs in. And I'd heard about ways of impregnating drugs into clothing, paper, which has that had been around for years. And then I read about this in this newspaper, this shipment of cocaine that had been impregnated into plastic garden furniture, patio sets, and a whole container had been seized at a port. Obviously, someone had put information in about it, because otherwise they wouldn't have caught it. And the cocaine had been mixed into the plastic, so it wasn't hidden inside it. It was the plastic, so that you could sit on the seats, and you were sitting on the cocaine. Basically, it was the cocaine. So I was just like, wow, that is the future of drug trafficking, or particularly cocaine. Anyway, I could just envision in the future, tons of cocaine coming into Europe in liquid form or in plastics. Just in a different form, so that it would get through much easier and almost be guaranteed to cross the border without having to pay anyone off. And it was like that eureka moment. And I spoke to my co-defendants in the prison in Parkhurst on the Isle of Wight, and I said, look, if we go back to drug trafficking when we get back out, I think this is the only thing I want to do. Want to get a connection in South America with the Colombian, Peruvian, or Bolivian, because that's where they make the best cocaine. Those three countries basically, and start importing it direct from there, but impregnated in rubber or plastic, because it was really new at that time. It was hardly anybody was doing it. It was a new thing. The British police or worldwide, they didn't know how to stop it, or they just didn't have the technology at the time. So get out of prison, start painting and decorating, and quite quickly got frustrated. The hard work, long days, and I had so many people ringing me up going, "Oh, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Do you want to get involved in this, that, and the other?" I was like, no, staying away from it. And then I had this one particular client that I was doing some painting and decorating from, and they just pissed me off. Didn't pay me on time. And I'd sort of started dabbling with cocaine in the weekends by this point. And it was that moment where that fuck it moment where you just go, I've had enough of this. Fuck it. You know what I mean? And I'd already said to my co-defendant, if I call you, you don't need to say anything on the phone because we're going to do everything face to face. Because by this point, I'd already realised that phones are really dangerous. Talking in cars or any enclosed environments, any electronic devices, all that was out. So I said, look, if I phone you, you'll know why. So I phoned him up and I said, hi, how you doing? And I think, in fact, we'd been doing a couple of paint and decorate jobs together before already anyway. So I phoned him up and I said, look, come and meet me. I want to talk to you. So we met up and got out of the car, went for a walk. Obviously left the phones in the cars. And I said, look, the time has come. Are you still up for this? And he said, yep. And I said, well, look, because he had better contacts up in London. He'd been like the main guy who I'd been getting most of the coke from back in the day up in London. So I said, can you get me a contact with, a South American that can get us the coke over there? If possible, do the work to impregnate it into rubber or plastic and, form a partnership with us and we'll start importing it. I'll find the passengers, get whatever else they need. We've got a massive sales base here. We can sell as much as they can send us. Because we literally, at that point, we literally could sell as much as
London.
We could get into the country. So he said, look, give me a week or two. I'll go up to London, talk to a couple of people I know, who we can find. And lo and behold, like I said, it turns out it was this Colombian who I mentioned who had been supplying that guy in Erith. So a couple of weeks goes by. My guy phones me up and he says, I found someone who might be a fit for what you want to do. I think they're already importing coke. Initially, just come up, buy some of them, just so you can sort of suss out who they are, see what we think about them. So I had some guy in Wales down in Newport who was ringing me up asking me for coke. So I phoned him up and I said, look, do you still want that coke? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, give me the cash. I'll go up to London. I'll get it for you. So he gives me the money for a kilo. Go up to London with the other guy. Go and meet this Colombian who was there with a Chilean guy. And buy a kilo of coke, have a bit of a conversation, a cup of tea. And sort of start talking about, might be interested in importing cocaine myself. Left it at that, took that kilo away, went back down to Wales, gave it to the guy. Had a chat to my friend, and I said, yeah, I think these guys, they seem pretty sound. Let's go back to buy another kilo, and then actually say what we're actually here for. So go back about a week later with the money again from Wales to get another kilo of coke, and I say, look, actually the reason I'm actually here is because I want to start importing cocaine, impregnated in rubber or plastic or whatever, but rubber or plastic seems like the one to me. Would you be interested in forming a partnership with us? The guy that did the introduction said, look, I'll be a silent partner in this, because he'd already sort of had enough of prison. He was a bit older than me. He said, look, you just get on with it and just give me a drink, like a commission on every one that you do. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So the Colombian and the Chilean were like, well, what can you bring to the table? And I said, well, look, I can bring investment to the table, because the guy in Wales had said, look, I'll put up 30 grand to do the first job to scale things up. I said, I can get as many passengers as you need, because I could see they were struggling for passengers. I said, I've got a massive sales base. I said, we can sell everything that you bring in just to one person, so we don't have to be running around selling to loads of people, so that'll narrow down the risk. And they said, oh yeah, this sounds like a good plan. And then they said, it turns out we're actually already bringing cocaine into the country, impregnated, in rubber, in the ground sheets of tents. So I was like, it was just like destiny to me, and a bit like the ambulance paramedic moment. This was another point in life where it was just like destiny stepped in and went, this is gonna happen, and it was just like it felt like it was meant to be, and I was like, wow, well, this is kind of like what I wanted to do anyway. So we formed a partnership, me, the Colombian and the Chilean, put a few ground rules in place, like, no talking on the phones about anything in particular. If we needed to talk on the phone, it was just to arrange a meeting. But at the meetings, leave the phones away. Don't talk in a car, don't talk in a house. Just loads of ground rules. Don't start being ostentatious, going out buying cars, flats, houses. Just keep it really cool. Don't tell anyone. Just loads of ground rules to keep it as safe as possible. And we started. And I decided to do the first one myself because I thought, well, it's the first one that we're doing together. The police aren't going to know because it's the first one. It was a risk to take, but I thought, I want to see the whole ins and outs of exactly how this is done. And I don't want to start sending other people to do something that I haven't done myself already. So flew out to Ecuador, brought the first one back, and got stopped in Holland by the Dutch police at Schiphol with the tent with 5 kilos of cocaine in it. And I thought, that's me, I'm fucked. And because I was in transit, the tent went from one plane to the other, and they put me in a holding room with about 30 other people, and I think there was only about 2 or 3 Europeans, me being one. And my turn came, and they got me into the interview room. They said, look, what have you been doing in Ecuador? And I'd gone and done a few tourist things, had loads of brochures and leaflets. I said, I've been here, there, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking any minute now, they're just going to produce this tent and put it on the table and go, what's this? And the conversation went on, and then he said, "Oh, sorry to have delayed you. You're free to carry on your journey." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Fucking hell, no way!" All right, I was like, "Thanks, see you later."
Really, but I've got 5 kilos of coke in my tent.
Honestly, I was thinking, there's no way they haven't found it. They must know I'm carrying to have pulled me in like this. But obviously, because I had a record and I'd just come out of prison, it was pretty hot.
Yeah. It probably raised a lot of red flags.
Yeah,
you were going to Ecuador.
And in my head, I was thinking, as soon as I arrive at Stansted, I was flying into, there's going to be British police waiting for me, and they've just done some arrangements so that they arrest me in Britain instead of there. So I get on the plane, land at Stansted, get to the luggage carousel, and I'm watching the tent go round and round, and then I'm thinking, shall I, shan't I? And in the end, I thought, oh, fuck it, just grabbed it, and nothing happened. Walked straight through the airport, out, job done.
That must have been, like, that flight from Schiphol to Stansted must have been the most nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
45 minutes of your life.
You can imagine the adrenaline, being, I was totally addicted to the adrenaline. So, that was the ultimate adrenaline.
Did you think that they almost did that so that you were going to get arrested in the UK?
Well, that's what I thought, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought that's what the plan was. So on that flight from Schiphol to London to Stansted, I was literally sat there for 45 minutes going shit.
Yeah, because they would do that so that it's like out of their hands, just the UK deal with it. Right?
And I was thinking maybe they'll follow me on and then take the rest of the group out.
I feel like at the time, like it's so interesting what you mentioned before about, like, you were doing like laboring, and then, like, the long hours and whatnot, and then you decided at one point there was like one event that you were like, fuck this. And we've had very similar conversations with everyone we've had on that has had a similar experience.
A fuck it moment.
It's just like, oh mate, and it's always been, I've been working long hours, getting paid fuck all, doing this and that, and at one point I was like, fuck you, I'm out. Right, so I feel like it's a common theme.
Oh,
and also you picked the right market, mate. There is no no shortage of sniff heads in London. Like there is no
Well,
shortage
I mean,
of that.
we were supplying the whole of Britain at the time. I was supplying up
Fuck,
to.
wait, what? You guys got to the whole... At one point,
No,
was it like
I
the
mean,
whole of Britain?
Before
Yeah.
I got arrested in Britain, I was already supplying up to Edinburgh,
Oh, shit.
uh,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense why you had the lab up there.
Wales,
Okay.
all over the country. So I had a huge sales base all over the
Okay.
country.
All right, so when like can you walk
And I'm
us?
not sniffing because I'm doing coke. I'm sniffing because I'm ill. Honestly.
I mean, so it's quite interesting the actual method, obviously the impregnating. So can you like walk us through how that actually happens? Like what, where, or
Can I do that legally?
I mean, you.
Well,
I
I mean,
don't-
to be honest, it's a well. I mean, now I
Mm.
mean, you can find it on the internet anyway. It's a well-known process. That I mean, things have gone through leaps and bounds. You can imagine the cartels are just throwing money at their chemist
Oh yeah.
every day to find new ways of getting around customs and excise. But I mean, there's so much money in cocaine and other drugs, well, particularly cocaine, that there's so much corruption around it that generally most of the big cartels, if they're sending tons, they want to make sure it's guaranteed to arrive, so they have it paid. The people in the port have, the dock workers, the customs and excise, they have them all paid off. And even in Europe, they have it paid off. They have some way of getting the container through the port. So, but yeah, like I said, back in 2000 and whatever it was, 2000 probably 1 or 2 when I was in Parkhurst, and I saw that article in that newspaper, and it was that eureka moment, and I saw the future, and sure enough, you can read about them now in the news. They're finding what they're calling super labs in the Netherlands, in Holland, particularly Holland, where they're literally sending over container loads in liquid. I was in prison in Ecuador with some Russian mafia who were in for 42 tons of cocaine. They had found 5 container loads of liquid molasses with cocaine mixed into it. Now it wasn't actually 42 tons, because what they did was, the Ecuadorian authorities, they just weighed the whole lot. They didn't extract the cocaine. And I remember a photograph of my friend and his Russian mob boss stood next to him with literally football fields worth of these barrels of molasses lined up like as far as the eye could see. In lines and lines and lines of, you can imagine 5 containers worth.
Yeah.
It's just
But that's what it was turning into, mate. It was turning into lines and lines and lines. For
Yeah,
other
exactly.
People, mate, so.
There you go. Yeah.
That's
And
what it is.
we're in Ecuador on the equator, which is a line around the world.
Yeah, there you go.
That was gonna be the name of my book. Was gonna be 10 years on the line originally, not El Infierno,
Yeah.
but Penguin, the publisher, said that it's too clever. People won't get it, and because in prison you follow lines. Like in America, you follow lines through the prison, get
Yeah.
different coloured lines to get you to different places. Lines of coke, the line of the equator, and it was going to be a picture of the globe with a white line around the equatorial line, and it was such a good title for the book.
I think that would have worked.
10 years on the line, because I spent 10 years in prison, 10 years on the line doing coke. And I was like,
Mate, that's brilliant.
why didn't they use it?
Yeah.
And instead they stuck some crim-looking guy on the cover. Not me, because I don't look like a crim, honest. and called it El Infierno, which, yeah, sure. But, I mean, I don't know. They obviously know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, about Penguin though, I feel like dropped the ball on that.
Yeah,
one,
they
but maybe I guess they thought like
they
the
could
average
always
person.
republish it.
Yeah, they could, and then maybe they thought just like the average person just isn't
Yeah.
smart enough to get that. But that is a brilliant name.
Yeah. But I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. So rewinding to the original question. So the process of impregnation, back in the day when I was doing it, we were using liquid latex, which is used for artificial skin and medical procedures and all sorts of stuff. And what they would do is they'd get the cocaine, put it into a solution, of alcohol. They would then mix it into the liquid latex and pour that into metal trays. Excuse me, and let it set naturally, because there was no way of really heating it up because it would just melt. So they had to put it out in the sun, and it would dry. And they tried to get it to set as in sheets as thin as possible, because the cocaine was, even though it was impregnated, it was still only on the surface. So when we got it back to Britain, we had to strip out the panels that contained the cocaine, these panels of latex, and cut it up as small as we possibly could to maximise the surface area, to then put it into pure alcohol, to then bring the cocaine back out into a solution. So, but anyway, so yeah, so you got it in your liquid solution, mix it into the liquid latex, set it, and you basically then got sheets of plastic cocaine, shall we say, or rubber cocaine, much the same as like a bicycle inner tube.
Yeah.
About the same thickness. In fact, it even sometimes looked like a bicycle inner tube. That is about the closest comparison I could give you. They were sometimes mixing carbon to like beat the X-ray, but I can never really see the point, because it was rubber anyway. So it's not going to show up on the X-ray anyway.
And is that quite like a simple thing to do? If you're a chemist, is that quite a simple thing to do? Just just do that.
It was. I think so. They must have just been experimenting and come across, this idea. I mean, I've seen it impregnated into wood, polystyrene. They've even got liquid glass in Ecuador. It's like a liquid. I don't know what it is, some sort of chemical. But you can mix it into the liquid glass in solution again, let it set on a pitcher, and then when you get it back, obviously you crack off the piece that contains the cocaine, put it into a solution of alcohol, and then get the cocaine out. I mean, honestly, they're so clever now. There's so many different ways. Like I said, mixing it into molasses, which is liquid sugar, putting it into bottles of alcohol, toiletries. That's quite a common one. So you could. I mean, honestly, there's a multitude of things that it could be put into. You name it. It could be put into cloth, foam. We could be sat on cocaine now for you. That could be cocaine. This
is all a front, by the way. This podcast is a front.
When we finish, we're gonna go break all this down and extract it. We're gonna go up and get really high.
This is a lab right now. This is actually a front, guys. So
do they just find what they can in there? Do they just find what they can maximise it, like the maximum they can put in the smallest surface area, and then use that technique, or will they keep changing it to keep the people keep the border control?
Yeah, I mean they keep switching it up to keep customs and excise guessing, because obviously there's informants all over the place, and as soon as a new method comes out, it's not long before customs and excise start hitting it. Someone's giving them information, and they find out. But the thing is if they don't have the information, and say for example in my case, the only way they found out was through informants, and without someone saying there's cocaine in that ground sheet of that tent, they wouldn't have known, because I mean even now it will go through an X-ray, a scanner, it won't show up on, the dog won't detect it. They can put in a chemical, the liquid test that changes colour. They can put in a chemical that will counteract that test, if you see what I mean. I mean, honestly, whatever customs and excise think of on this side, they're thinking about a way of counteracting it on that side. All day long, they're thinking of ways around that.
It's like it's a constant game of battleship.
Yeah, it's like yeah, exactly. Totally.
That is crazy. I mean, I've always been incredibly fascinated about how like they actually just obviously they throw a lot of money at it, don't they?
Yeah.
Like to actually think of ways to get past police, especially these days as well. How it's so like the technology they have to obviously fight against the drug trade is just so advanced, but they still manage to just one up that every single. They're always one step ahead, and that's like a common thing, right? They're one step ahead every single time.
I mean, I've heard at the moment. I mean, through the press, the price of cocaine in Britain at the moment is rock bottom. In fact, in the whole of Europe, is rock bottom. Is really low.
How come?
Because the market's flooded. It's absolutely flooded.
Too much coke.
So yeah, exactly.
What?
In any market, if the say bottles of water, if there's too much water in the market, the price goes down. Whatever market it is, if there's too much, the price goes down. B, the quality goes up, because obviously they're the two main selling points. So, obviously, I don't know how. Well, I've just told you how, but there's a lot of cocaine hitting the shores of Britain, Europe, and it's just awash with it. It's just flooded. So the price is absolutely rock bottom.
Oh God, obviously that just doesn't usually.
Coke's like a commodity. Like, could you invest
exactly.
in coke right now, and then when it like it gets seized and it gets used up, it gets back up. To
Bro's thinking about stocks right now.
Well, it is like the commodities market.
Yeah.
It's like buying futures in cocoa, or futures in oil, or futures in whatever. You could buy futures in cocaine.
Yeah. You just need to find somewhere to store it.
Yeah, buy 10 tons, stick it in a warehouse, and wait until the price goes through the roof again. I mean, not long ago it was 50 grand. Now it's somewhere around 20.
Oh, okay.
Per
kilo, if not lower.
Should we get in the game, mate?
Well, yeah. If anyone wants to make a quick raise, I guess now's the time.
Don't come to me. See these guys.
We're already heavily involved.
Speak for yourselves. My nerves are starting to twitch. Honestly, I'm getting nervous.
We'd be way richer. God. We'd be way richer if we were involved in the drug.
The doors are going to the door comes in a minute.
We get swatted.
We're asking about laundering money through the business.
Listen, little by little. Listen, I mean, if the police is watching little by little, you know what we're getting up to, mate.
Should we do the tier list?
I'm going to shoot you now.
Fuck it. Yeah, you're probably saving us a lot of hurt, mate.
Yeah.
Right, are you able to rank the sale of these drugs in order?
Okay.
Cocaine, LSD, heroin.
How do you mean? Hold on, slow down. Rank them in sales of.
Just
in order.
Overall, like what you think is the best to sell.
Okay, right.
Like what you would choose to sell.
Okay.
So cocaine, LSD, heroin, crack, weed, and MDMA.
Well, I mean, for market usage, obviously the most frequently used drug is marijuana, weed. The most profitable drugs are cocaine, heroin, and crack. They're also obviously the most damaging drugs. Those three probably ranked together. And LSD, along with ecstasy, is somewhere in the middle.
I feel like it's more of a niche market, isn't it?
What?
I guess like you don't like it's not very common to because usually drug dealers.
LSD.
If you're LSD.
It used to be really common. In fact, that was one of the drugs that when the free party scene was going on, I remember seeing blocks of LSD, sheets or blocks that thick. I don't know how many trips were there. Sheets of 1,000. So you imagine sheets of 1,000, a block that thick. That's a lot of trips.
Yeah.
On a traveller's site off the A46 near a place called, we used to call it the Funny Farm. It was an abandoned farm on what was the common? Not the Castlemore Common. Chipping Somber Common. It was famous back in the. A lot of people will know this. Old school ravers. The Funny Farm. They used to hold massive raves there with all these big, 10 foot, 20 foot sort of papier-mâché sculptures. loads of LSD and ecstasy, and the LSD back then was just mental. Honestly, it was just fucking nuts. You'd be tripping for a day or two, if not
Jesus
more.
Christ.
Scary stuff.
Would they not
honestly.
measure like the milligram in it and then tell people? Would they not measure the milligrams within the LSD?
No, they'd just be like, fucking just soak a sheet, hang it, undrip it. The bottom of the sheet be stronger than the top. Whoever got the bottom would be wasted.
Yeah, fucking hell.
Microdots, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, God. So yeah, back when I was really young, I remember sitting there cutting up 1,000 trips with no gloves on. Honestly, I've done so much acid, which probably explains a few things. As you know, ended up tripping because obviously it's going through your fingertips. Weirdest way to start tripping, honestly, without actually taking any, is cutting it up.
Yeah.
1,000 trips.
Did you know you were going to start tripping? Or
Oh
was
yeah,
it?
I knew I was going fully on with it.
Fuck it, let's do it.
But yeah, it used to be up until about the late 90s. It was really commonplace, and then it just sort of went out of fashion. But LSD now, I don't know. I haven't heard of LSD and been around for ages. I don't know about you guys. I don't know. You're a bit younger.
I mean, it's definitely like, obviously, like when you go into the rave scene, there's people doing like, you know, there's a lot of stuff going around. There's like
there's a lot of MDMA.
People do acid at raves. People do 2CB. People like.
Do you know what? I remember when that was invented. I didn't know they actually invented, but I was very close to the people in Holland who invented 2CB, 2CT7, I think it was. Did we say 2CB? Yeah. And there was a whole. It was because I was at uni then, and they were all offshoots of MDMA. They're all derivatives of MDMA, all the like different sort of elements of MDMA that do different things. And I remember when they came out, going over to Holland and getting 2CB, 2CT7, and this, that, and the other, and all these little niche drugs that we were testing out. And it was, oh God, it was crazy.
So you were one of the first people to test out 2CB.
Yeah, I remember it back in the day. I didn't think much of it at the time because it was like, you know, compared to like, because the ecstasy was so strong. It was like, oh, this is a bit fucking lame, really.
A lot of people tend to think that. I think you'd be surprised.
I thought it was acid and MDMA mixed. So
yeah, because it's a little bit trippy. It's like the trippy element of of MDMA.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't know, but I know people who have done it, and it's just,
yeah, what's he lying for? What? He said don't lie.
No, I actually haven't. No, I swear I haven't.
Blown his cover, Pete.
No,
Blown his cover.
I'm not, man. No, I don't do that.
Not that.
But you have
friends. No, definitely not.
But what were you gonna say? You have.
Yeah, but like I know. Well, we actually know someone who is a fan of it, and. Well, obviously, like, yeah, and there's people. What I've seen is there's people who either swear by it, or there's people who just are just like no, it's just the most stupid thing ever. It just makes no sense. Like, so I feel like there's a lot. It's a lot like that, especially in the rave scene in sort of England. Actually, how do you think the rave scene in England is different? Like now to back then, like how was the rave scene back then?
Because I'm not really involved with it now, I can't really comment on it too much. But I mean, back then it was people thought it was going to change the world, sort of thing. It was like, you know, back in the '60s, the hippie movement, and it was such a big thing. Every weekend there'd be a massive rave, and you'd get the hotline number because mobile phones were pretty new then. So you get the hotline number and you phone up and you get directions to the party. And I remember in my area, Stroud, we'd all meet up on this common, Minchinhampton Common, which is on top of a hill. And there'd be like 400, 500, 600 cars there. And we'd all set off on a massive convoy, just going straight through red lights, you know. And it was like, we just felt that we were indestructible, you know, and like I said, ecstasy was so strong back then, and most of the drugs were, and cocaine was completely different. But I mean, I wasn't really involved with cocaine at that point, but it was the police wouldn't really get involved at that point because the criminal justice bill hadn't come into act. So they just let the rave happen and put a cordon around it and just let it go on. So they'd be like 10,000 people, 15, 20,000 people there. It was just massive, going on for like 3, 4, 5, 6 days. And by the time that was over, it'd be time for another one to go to. And and then you had all the new age travellers going around, literally going from one to the next. And it was a movement, and people, because ecstasy was fairly new then as well. And again, people thought ecstasy was going to change the world. And I mean, to some extent it did. MDMA certainly changed a lot of people's lives, for good or for bad. There's a lot of experimentation now in microdosing with LSD and a lot of these drugs, mushrooms, MDMA. So, I mean, I know raves still go on. I mean, I've got a girlfriend who's quite a bit younger than me. I won't say her name, but hi. I know you're not very happy that I'm here. It's Easter weekend. I know you didn't want me to come, but I did. Sorry.
We're sorry. We're sorry about that. We're sorry for taking Pete away from you today.
But she was saying that there's going to be egg tech, I think it is, like the egg tech, because it's Easter bank holiday. You've got Easter egg. So there's some sort of big rave happening this weekend somewhere. So they're still going on. Whether or not they're so as full on as they were back in the day, I don't know.
Would you say you capitalised on that movement?
Did I?
Yeah, profitable, moving.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's when I really started getting. That's when I was building up. A, my contacts. B, my knowledge of the whole market and the way it worked, and just my knowledge of drugs, I suppose. And because quite a few people around me were really heavily involved in, unbeknown to me at the time, importing ecstasy and amphetamines and LSD, I was pretty close to the source on many occasions. So I was getting really high quality stuff at a good price. So yeah, definitely capitalised on it.
What would you be making on one rave? Was it big money at that age? Or no?
Yeah, you go in there with I mean, I wouldn't tend to go in with too much because the police were there. But quite frequently I'd go in maybe with a 500 or 1,000 pills and a load of acid and some amphetamine, and come away with good 2, 3, 4, 5 grand, stuff like that.
That's decent. That's a decent little pay in cash as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, obviously in cash.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, not Bitcoin.
So did you spend
most? Exist.
No,
did you spend most of your night just doing transactions then?
Yeah. It used to be, we literally walking around. It was that free because the police wouldn't come in, and any undercovers would get beaten the fucking kicked out. So you'd be literally walking around with your mates shouting pills, weed, acid, ecstasy, just shouting it out, with a couple of people around you to watch your back. Just free, just absolutely free to do whatever you want.
That is shit. That to be fair, that is no, that's right. I don't want to glorify it, but that's what I imagined the rave scene was like. Obviously, you've got all these people. It's a movement at the time as well. It was when it first got introduced into the market. There was obviously everyone was just like, oh, love, peace, love, free.
It was totally
free,
like that.
So there must have been opportunities for you to actually get stuck into the culture there.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic time. I mean, I loved the rave scene. It was great. Just the whole scene of it, being outside of the law, feeling, completely untouchable. And I suppose that's why, I started to get addicted to the whole adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I probably always had that element in my DNA makeup.
Now it's just like at raves, it's just like thousands of people with their phones. Like,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What,
Well, I mean,
filming it?
Yeah,
right.
Just not
mate,
living
mate.
in the moment.
Okay, can we just say we haven't actually really been. We've been to raves,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
obviously
I
at
guess
uni and stuff like that, but we haven't been to like the proper
but you
like
see online,
underground
right?
because right now like their illegal raves is like what we're talking about. Right, so we've actually never been to one of those. I don't think I ever plan to because these days they've become like really bad. Like these days, like there's people getting stabbed. There's people like people die like pretty much, like
Guaranteed.
way more than they would back then.
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, for example, one of the first ones I ever went to, I actually bumped into someone that told me a story of how he'd been put on the door at that party to stop any troublemakers coming in because he's quite a hard guy. And he bumped into me because he's seen one of the podcasts I'd done in my hometown, a guy from my hometown. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I remember you from the parties and whatnot. It was at an old Great Mills warehouse that was abandoned, and there was a DJ turned up there in the morning called Mickey Finn. I don't know whether you've heard of him. A real old school DJ. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he's still alive now. I think he is, but really famous at the time. And he's turned up there in the morning. But we would have some sort of security on the door so the troublemakers wouldn't come in. And if they did come in, they would soon get kicked out. I mean, I remember at Castle Morton, have you heard of that rave? It was one of the biggest, and that's when the government decided to bring in the what did I say?
There was like more policing and
the criminal justice bill. Because it was like 30,000 people at Castle Morton, which is an area near Ledbury, near Gloucester, and it went on for nearly a week. And a flare like a flare gun, got shot at a police helicopter, and I mean it was huge. There was 6 massive sound systems there. Spiral Tribe, if people remember that. DIY was another one who were from Nottingham, Derby area. I can't remember the other ones there.
Because there was like big DJs at the time.
Yeah, but it was huge, and there was one particular troublemaker there, and they'd got hold of him because he'd been going around robbing people, and they dosed him up. There were these what they called do-it cubes, which were these sugar cubes soaked in everything like LSD, ketamine, anything you could put into liquid and then put into a big sugar cube, and they called it do-it cubes. Anyway, they got hold of this guy. I think his name was Digger. His nickname was Digger from Cardiff, I think he was from, and they fucked him up. He was never the same afterwards. They loaded him up with drugs, beat the fuck out of him, tied him to the because they were like marquees there, so they tied him to the main pole of a marquee. I just mind fucked him, and honestly, he was never the same again. But he was up to lots of no good.
Yeah, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah,
that is pretty brutal.
Like, trip,
he was pretty fucked up. I'm sure his name was Digger.
I wonder if he still like got that trauma.
It's Digger D,
yeah, I'm
mate.
pretty sure he was never the same afterwards. I remember people saying he was never the same afterwards.
Well, it goes to show why Digger D's music's like that.
I might have his name wrong, so if I've got Digger's name wrong, sorry Digger, I didn't. I may have your name wrong.
I'm sure he'll appreciate the mention on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's probably deep in it though. He's probably really fucked up. Still.
Yeah,
like paranoid. Don't talk about me.
You're hearing his name coming out of the TV. Go fuck.
That is
TV's
like...
talking to me, but actually he really is.
Fucking hell. So I mean, Pete, last time you were on, I don't think we actually got you could tell in your prime, you could tell how pure the cocaine was just by rubbing it in your fingers.
Yeah, pretty much. The cocaine back then, it was different to the cocaine that you get these days, just because of the chemicals and because of the chemicals being more controlled in South America now. So things like ether, that was one of the main ingredients, that they can't really get it there, so they substitute other ingredients that maybe aren't as good. So it's not it's still cocaine. It still comes from the coca leaf, but it's definitely not the same recipe, should we say? So it's not the same product. It's like decaffeinated Coca-Cola, should we say? Well, Coca-Cola used to have coca in it, so it's like Coca-Cola without the coca in it.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I used to be able to literally rub it between my fingers, and you could tell really good cocaine was like rubbing butter between your fingers. So there'd be no resistance. So if there was any sort of resistance or anything left on your finger afterwards, you know it had been cut. So you rub it between your fingers a couple of times to heat it up. You then smell it. You could then smell, because obviously there's a lot of alcohol and acids in cocaine, like ether, acetone, and stuff like that. So you smell it, and if you can smell those, like almost like salt and vinegar smell, you know, yeah, that smells like an ether wash or whatever wash it was. I'd look at the colour, and pure white, you can almost be guaranteed it would be Bolivian. If it was really like mother of pearl and pure white, Bolivian. The Peruvian would be more of a yellowy, buttery sort of colour, but very strong when washed up into freebase or crack cocaine. Whereas the Bolivian one, washed up into crack cocaine, would be like smoking fresh air. You know, people would say they'd hardly be able to feel it. So it was like Bolivian was we used to say Bolivian was for sniffing, Peruvian was for washing into crack, and Colombian was for either or, because it would tended to be a mix of the both. And back in those days, a lot of Colombian cocaine, a lot of it tended to have a bit of a diesely, what we used to call diesel, because they would use diesel as the gasoline, you know, in the early stages of the process. To get the coca out of the leaf, they use gasoline and this, that, and the other, but they would not process it properly, so you'd end up with what we used to call diesel. So quite often Colombian cocaine would look a little bit like a hybrid of the Peruvian, which it is to some extent, the Peruvian and the Bolivian, and it would have a different feel, different colour, and different smell.
Okay. Yeah, that is obviously when you're in the trade. I guess that's something that you become accustomed to. Like, you straight away you can tell, like, by doing
a lot of Colombians, I would see, or South Americans, I would see, put a little bit on the tip of the tongue, and you would do that because really pure cocaine, you would get like a biting, almost like someone has stuck a pin in your tongue, because it's so strong, because of the acids in it, because it's got hydrochloric acid in there. So obviously that's what breaks down the membrane in your nose and gets it into your bloodstream. So they would put it on the tip of the tongue and maybe the gums, but normally the tip of the tongue, and just to taste it. They would do it by taste and the feeling on the tongue, and also to see how numb your tongue went or your gums went, because obviously it makes you go really numb. But I always felt, well, I don't know, I had my own way of doing it. Honestly, there were so many different ways of testing cocaine. You could drop in a glass of water and you could see trails, and if it went down to the bottom and by the time it hit the bottom it was clear, you'd know it was pure. Whereas if it left a trail, you that would be the cut in it. Or drop it in chlorine. Honestly, I could go through so many different tests.
I mean, drug dealers. This is
we used to have what was called a hot box, which was you'd heat it up, and I can't remember the temperature there. It was I think it was like, God, what was it? 230 degrees centigrade or Fahrenheit. It burns out pure cocaine. It's like, you know, in that film. What's the film? I can't remember.
There's a lot of them, to be fair.
Yeah, it's one of the really famous ones where they get the cocaine and he's heating it up and he goes, "Oh, it's really good. Can I keep this?"
Is it layer cake?
No, it's an American one.
What? There's so many.
Yeah, I can't. Anyway, we used to have this metal block, iron, made out of iron, with a thermometer next to it, and we put the coke on it, heat it up, put it on a cooker. We'd heat it up, and you'd watch it burn, and different elements of cocaine burn at different temperatures. So any sugars burn at a lower temperature. So if it didn't burn at all until it reached whatever the temperature is, which I think is 230. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 230. Would it be Fahrenheit? It might be degrees centigrade. I can't remember. Sorry, but one or the other. If it got to that temperature anyway, without anything coming off it, and then it burnt, you'd know that was pure. But if it started burning before that and frazzling, you'd know there was some sort of cut. And all the different cuts have different burning points, melt points.
Okay.
So pure, you're saying like 100% pure coke?
Yeah.
You'd get your hands on 100%.
Oh yeah, the coke we were getting, it was 100% pure. It was never cut at that point. Yeah, no.
Damn, that's.
So did you ever try?
There isn't. If anybody says 100% pure, there's no such thing. It's 96%. I think is about the highest percent you could get because of the salts in there, sulfates and stuff. 96% is the highest percentage pure cocaine you could get. There is no such thing as 100%.
How much coke of a 96% would get you like off your rocker?
How do you mean?
Like,
because
like today people might sniff a half gram, let's say, to get.
Oh no! Look, for half gram of that, you'd be probably lucky to be alive. I mean, because I have a low tolerance to drugs. Well, I say that I used to do a lot of acid for them, but I mean, generally, back in the day, I would do like a little, I'd call it like a cat's whisker of cocaine, and I would feel that, and the Bolivian cocaine. You know, like in the old films, you'd see like Scarface, for example. You'd see him doing cocaine and then eating food. You used to be able to do that with Bolivian cocaine. It was so clean, and for some reason, you'd be able to do cocaine, do the Bolivian cocaine, and eat food, but be so high. Without any paranoia or any sort of bad elements, but just like really hyper and really high and really like 100 miles an hour. Whereas doing Colombian cocaine, you'd feel a bit paranoid, a bit digi, a bit like you wouldn't want to eat. You know, do you see what I mean? That, like, these are the differences between how they were made, the different ingredients that went into them. I know where the 230 came from. It's 230 odd different alkaloids that are in cocaine, and they're all different depending on where it's from. Like coffee, they're present in different levels, so each cocaine is slightly different to another. Like coffee, like chocolate, you know, they all have different levels of alkaloids, and I think it's 180 degrees that the cocaine burns up.
So like, if Bolivians, you know, so much more ideal, if like you're not getting
for sniffing,
why can't the Colombians replicate that? Is that due to the plant growing, or
it's where it's grown, and also I think it's particularly where it's grown, the soil, the altitude, but also I think it's the chemists there, the way that they make it. Again, that I think they must have access to better chemicals, because honestly, for sniffing, Bolivian was without a shadow of a doubt the best that you could get. And I remember when I'd open it up, and if I saw it was Bolivian, I'd be like, oh my god, yippee ki. Do you know what I mean? It's like, fuck yes. And they'd always have this amazing stamp in the top of some like Aztec symbol, and it would be like mother of pearl, the whole block shimmering, and none of this fake boracic acid flake in there, you know, where you got the fake flake as they call it. It'd be like, Jesus Christ.
Sounds like a drug dealer's wet dream, though.
Yeah, it was like, wow. You know, be like, oh, yeah, fuck.
When that landed, did you always, like, you know, get a bit, like, try a bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because you do see like in films,
on the
like
knife,
they open it, they get a knife, and then they try it, and they're like, yeah,
I
this good shit,
had a
man.
special knife, and I'd go like that across it. And I remember on one occasion go like a ping, and it went in my eye. And I honestly, I had a numb eye, and it was the weirdest feeling. I've done it accidentally a couple of times, but just by having it on my finger and then rubbing my eye, a bit like with chilies. But it would make your eye go numb, so your eye would water, and it'd be like it was the weirdest
So
feeling.
it's like
honestly.
you had a little bit of paralysis there.
Yeah, it was like almost having a stroke or something.
That must be the maddest feeling.
I was just trying to dig a bit out, and it went ping and went straight in my eye. I was like, "Fuck!"
I'm in
really
for a
weird.
ride here. Okay.
Yeah, go on.
I think should we move on to the true or false
Go on.
drug trade edition?
Go on.
We've come up with something new, right? So we're gonna give you a set of questions, and you just say true or false, okay?
Yeah.
Right. Everyone involved in the drug trade is motivated purely by greed.
No.
Loyalty is the most valuable currency in the drug trade.
I would say yeah, definitely.
There's
There's got to be one of them for sure.
yeah, okay. There's a clear corporate ladder within most drug organizations.
Yeah.
Violence is always the last result in resolving disputes.
No.
Keeping a low profile is the key to long-term success in the business.
I would say definitely.
The majority of money made goes directly to the top individuals.
In a good organisation, I would say, I mean, like for example, in our organisation at the top, we used to make sure that everybody got paid a fair wage, and it was all split equally at the top. So, but I mean, obviously, the majority goes to the top. So
Yeah, as it is, it's a business at the
yeah,
end of the day.
yeah.
Trust is easily earned and maintained in that world.
That is a joke. But I would say trust is key. I mean, honestly, drug trafficking I've always said this, is an easy business if you've got the right people. Because it's a commodity, like you said. It's moving a commodity from A to B. If you've got trustworthy people who are loyal, then it's and not greedy. It's pretty easy if you have the means of if you've got the way of doing it. If you've got the means of way of doing it. If you've got the people that are trustworthy, loyal, and not greedy, you're set really.
Yeah, that's true. I guess these days you've got a lot of stakeholders, don't you? So like you might be a bit more difficult, but you've got to find yourself a good group, is what you're saying. Like you've got to be like you've got your.
I think keeping the group small as well, because the bigger it is, the more people involved.
Yeah, there's less conflict of interest, isn't there?
Yeah, as well.
Okay. So, there's a strong sense of community and camaraderie among people in the same organisation.
I think there should be, because obviously that leads to trust and loyalty. And if there isn't a strong camaraderie, then I mean, it's like you can compare it to the military if you want. I mean, they won't appreciate that, but I mean, in any organisation, that's important.
Okay, and then last one, you develop a thick skin and become immune to the consequences of your actions.
Yeah, I think you do, unfortunately, and also seeing it, like for example, in prison and the amount of death that I saw at a young age. You never become fully immune to it, but you certainly, the more you see it, the more to some extent, the less it affects you, and certainly, the more the amounts of drugs that I've dealt with and other people have dealt with, the more you do it, and I think obviously other people. Everybody has their own way of thinking and own opinions on the matter, but so a lot of people would say that people are just naturally inquisitive from the Stone Age, have experimented, and we'll always experiment with mind-altering drugs, be it coffee, be it chocolate, be it sugar, alcohol, tobacco, whatever you want to name, cocaine, heroin, there's always going to be
human nature.
Yeah, because the brain is a very powerful organ, I suppose, and we only use 5%, if that.
Yeah, something like
and drugs open pathways in the brain that are already there, and that we can probably already open ourselves, but we don't yet know how to. Because, I mean, that's what drugs do. They're only opening up things that are already in your body, or maybe or adding to them, shall I say? Yeah.
It's just giving you access to it. Like, it's crazy how, having. The thing is, these things kind of interest me, so I like to research it and stuff like that. So, like, obviously, acid is literally just a chemical reaction that goes on into your brain that makes your brain react and gives you, because those are things that your brain can do. It's just that you don't have access to it.
DMT as well.
Exactly. That's DMT is a prime example.
Yeah,
prime example.
That's already in your body anyway.
It's crazy. Like, I will never, absolutely never do DMT. That's something that, like, it just,
I've never
things
tried
like
it.
that
I tried to inhale once, but it's a bit like Bill Clinton. I inhaled, but I didn't. Whatever.
Take off.
I took control, but I didn't inhale or whatever it is. But I just was like, because it tastes vile.
Yeah. And also, like Bill Clinton, I didn't get sucked off, but below the desk. No.
And also as well, I was a bit wary of it at the time, because again, that was quite new to the market, and I was like, well, I'm not sure what the effects are going to be.
Yeah.
Some people do it like quite often though. Like every couple months, they'll reset and recenter and go to this other realm.
Just break through.
It enlightens like their own personal situations.
Again, some people. I mean, totally.
I think they recommend you to be over 25. So anyone watching who's thinking about it, try it until, like, when your brain's fully developed.
Right.
You shouldn't do it under that.
I think that was definitely one of my problems. I was smoking weed by the age of like 11 or whatever it was. It may have even been younger. I mean, my dad was smoking hash, and I was in. I first got stoned when I was like 4. I accidentally ate some hash cake that I was given, a chocolate cake, by my mum. She didn't realise at a party. Great lump of chocolate cake. Here you go, son. Enjoy. Oh boy, I'll never forget that day. Was I stoned? You can imagine a 4-year-old with a huge big chunk of hash cake, chocolate cake. I mean, meant for an adult that would have wrecked them.
What happened to you? Like,
I mean, I remember thinking, things are a bit funny today. This is not quite a normal day. I was like wandering around going, wow, I feel a bit sleepy. This is a bit weird. Yeah, it was a bit weird day.
Surprised you didn't have to go to like hospital or something, because a 4-year-old, that is.
Well, I think because my dad was smoking weed from the day I was born anyway. I mean, I remember school kids at my school saying, "You look like you're wearing makeup because my eyelids were always red." I was really stoned all the time, passively.
Was your dad who put you onto like your first joint, or?
No, not at all. No. He never introduced me to drugs. He stopped smoking weed before I started, actually.
Okay. So I feel like it's crazy these days though, like obviously the damages that weed can like do to you. A lot of people just think, oh well, it's it's just a basic, everyone smokes weed.
I'll give you an example, and it's a real bad one. My stepbrother, and sorry to tell my stepman for mentioning this on a podcast, you probably won't see this anyway, but he killed himself. He committed suicide after smoking hash over a period of years, and it was actually after one of his parties that I found about an eighth of squidgy black, the old hash squidgy black, red seal, down in the basement, where in the house that I kind of grew up in, and he'd had a party down there with his friends, and he was smoking hash, really highly intelligent, but that intelligent that I think he was borderline, obviously maybe had a few issues, and it just tipped him over the edge. And I won't go into too many details because it was fucking weird day. And he made several attempts at suicide. And my dad and stepmom were in France at the time. In fact, I'm going to the house in about a week's time. And they just bought the holiday home that I'm going to in a week's time. And me and my stepbrother were at home in this quite large house on our own. And he was running around the house screaming his head off and being weird. And I was just like in my own room, just sort of staying out of the way, just sort of letting him do his own thing. And I wish I'd intervened, because I heard him go screaming through the house, screaming out the door, shouting, out the door, out the back door, out the garden to the carport in front of the church. Get in the car, go out. And I thought, he's not coming back. I thought he's going out to kill himself, because I'm quite perceptive, and people that know me know that I frequently, people will call me, and without even picking up the phone, I'll know who's calling me, or I'll think of someone and they'll call me, or vice versa. Do it all the time with my girlfriend and a lot of other people. Telepathy is 100% a real thing, because I do it all the time. I've always done it from a really young age, and it does exist. And I'm not going to go into it because it's too traumatic, but I knew he wasn't coming back. And later that day, there was a knock on the door, and I was in the shower and I didn't answer the door. But anyway, I got a phone call from his wife, a Chinese girl, later that day, and the knock on the door had been the police, to tell me that he had driven down to Michael Wood Services on the M5, parked his car, walked down the slip road and out in front of a lorry, and the lorry killed him. He literally got bounced off the lorry, and I was basically the last person other than the lorry driver to hit him to see him alive, and that was because of weed. So it just shows you that weed, if I smoke weed, that's why I don't smoke weed. And I think it's because of the effects of the amount of LSD that I did, because I've done well over 1,000 trips that I counted, let alone cutting up the amount of trips I used to sell, blocks of 1,000 trips, and God knows how many trips I've done, but I've done well over 1,000. And it binds very closely with your receptors in your brain, LSD, and it never really leaves your body. So if I smoke hash, I trip straight away. If I'm in a room with someone smoking weed, I'll get passively stoned, and I will trip. I will hallucinate. And I didn't realise this until I told my present girlfriend this, and she was like, "That's not fucking normal. Like, most people smoke weed and they just chill out and they calm." I said, if I even inhale a little bit, I hallucinate, like full hallucinations, audio, visual. And I thought that was normal. And I didn't realise until I met my present girlfriend about 5-6 years ago that wasn't normal. But I know quite a few other people have that as well. So obviously it affects some people differently to others. And now, I don't know whether it's the amount of LSD, I don't know whether I don't know whether I've got some borderline personality, whatever's, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, hashish, weed, whatever you want to call it, definitely has negative effects on some people. And there's a very severe example of what it can do.
I think it's just the most accepted drug, isn't it? But people don't realise. And when you're like, if you're in it, people just try like turn the tables about it's all right because it's weed, it's not that, but it can actually have a massively detrimental effect.
Yeah, I mean,
but it does have some positive effects. I mean, I invested in a company that used to be called, well, can I mention them? Yeah. Used to be called GW Pharmaceuticals, and they were one of the first companies that developed a drug in Britain using cannabis for epilepsy, I think it was. They then got bought out by a company called Jazz Pharmaceuticals, but you can look them up. I bought the chairs at like 50p, and they sold out at like £8.50, and I made a lot of money on that. I bought like 1,000 shares and made a shit ton of money, because I saw at the time, I knew they were gonna find something, because I knew that there are beneficial sides to cannabis, but obviously not for everyone. And there were loads of ex-ministers investing in this company, and I thought, well, if they're investing, they know something that everyone else doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, in that world as well, a lot, as much as it's illegal, a lot of it's like insider.
Yeah,
like,
so an
you
insider
get the
trade.
tip.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look,
sure.
at the end of the day, you get good information. Why you'd be
anyone would use it. Yeah.
Actually, this is what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
If you were one of the border guards, right, when they're smuggling everything in, obviously you're on a normal wage, you're probably on minimum wage.
Yeah.
Someone comes in with 50 grand in cash, or however much they're paying you off for, which is probably giving you your yearly wage in cash right there. Surely you're like, I'd say yes. I'd be like, yeah, calm. I'll turn the other. I'll turn them.
How do you mean? I don't quite follow.
Like just to get things through, just to get paid off, pretty much.
What you mean? If you've been, what are you saying on a one-off?
You're at no. Just you're in the port.
So somebody's approached you.
Yeah, you're in the port. Like this is the shipments that are coming in.
We want you to turn a blind eye to our right. So you become a corrupt agent. So what was the question?
So let's say, back in the day, all these shipments are coming through. You get one of the people from the cartel or whatever organization.
I mean, we were offered that in South America, and I said, well, there's no point, because our system's that good. What's the point in tipping them off to the fact that we're taking drugs through? Because if they decide to turn on us, they know it's in there. So why tip them off?
What do you mean by that? That's
because they wouldn't be.
Because it was in
anyway.
plastic.
Okay,
they did
Which is mad.
because at that time.
Okay, so you
would
have to pay. So at the time you did. It was so good you didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, because it was offered to us, and I was like, fuck that. What's the point? Paying somebody else.
You're not gonna find it anyway, mate.
Yeah. So why give them the nod?
I mean, look.
Nowadays, I mean, yeah, for sure. In Europe, I mean, that is, like I say, the money is so large, and if you imagine, I mean, I know they got serious problems in the ports in Belgium and in Holland, in say Rotterdam, Antwerp, Rotterdam particularly, because I think the port is fairly accessible there, and there's that much container traffic coming in that they just can't search. I mean, coming into Britain, I think they only search 3% of all the containers coming through. Christ. So you imagine coming into Rotterdam, which is even big. I think it's the biggest container port in certainly in Europe anyway. They can probably only search about 1 or 2% there. And if someone came to you and said, "We'll pay you €1 million," because it's going to be on that level, €1 million to turn a blind eye to that one container coming through once a month.
You're making $1 million a month.
They wouldn't even need to know what's in it. Say there's 5 or 10 tons in there.
$1 million, yeah.
It's hardly surprising the market is flooded.
Yeah, true.
But the thing is like once you've done that once, right? They're gonna want you to keep being their guy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like, can you ever leave that job and then you've got in a year 12 mil cash sat there?
I think the only way you would leave is not. You wouldn't be able to say anything. You just have to quit your job really quietly and just get the fuck out of town. And you sort of be on the run.
Because otherwise they'll just threaten your family if you don't put that through, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sticky one. It's a bit of like a quid pro quo sort of situation.
I mean, normally how it goes down is they'll find someone that's got a gambling problem or someone who's got a weakness, and they'll lock on to that weakness. They do their research, and then it is a bit like in the films, and then they'll target them. Okay. Maybe the person won't realise it at the time that they're being targeted, but by the time they get asked, it's too late. They'll already have some hold on them.
Fuck, it's all tactical, isn't it? They do their research to get that weakness, and then that's how it goes, and that's obviously that's how it ends really at a certain point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Pete, to be honest, mate, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. Well, happy, you came back on, have a good
I think
conversation.
Pete's the only guest that we'll probably do a part 2 with in our whole podcast.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
because we enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, this is the
Probably
only.
room for part 3.
Yeah, we could always do a part 2.
You know what? You know what we were thinking of doing. I think we should. I think we might cut this out. So let's end it off, and then we'll speak to Pete about what we're thinking of doing. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah,
it's great.
Thanks for watching.
Like, subscribe, comment.
Yeah, the book El Infierno. It's
Buy
on
it.
Amazon.
We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and then the film, the
Yeah,
series.
yeah,
Stay tuned.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers
crossed
It's gonna
his
be a few years
personality.
yet, but
Yeah.